Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting held at 4 p.m., actually 4:07 p.m. on December 19th, 2022. Here at the City of Fernie, we acknowledge that the City of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded traditional territory of Yakanakliat. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakanakliat and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I will call the meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted by in-person and electronic means in accordance with Council Procedure Bylaw number 2446. And we have a communication link via a specified place, and the recommendation that if the communication link at the specified place, to the specified place for this meeting is interrupted and cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting shall be adjourned and reconvened to the soonest possible time that quorum can be achieved and public notice requirements met. I will require a mover and a seconder. Councillor Hamilton, Councillor McIsaac. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Can I ask for any late agenda items? Seeing none, I'll ask for approval of the agenda. Mover, Councillor McIsaac, Councillor Kelly. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Can I ask for adoption of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on November 21st, 2022? Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Kelly, any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that's unanimous. I'd like to now open the floor to public participation. The public participation period. I invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, excluding matters for which speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. And a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And do we have anyone for public participation? Seeing none. We'll move on to our first delegation, or our delegation, sorry, tech resources. And Liz, could you promote the tech delegation, please?
Your worship, I'd like to declare that I've received a legal opinion that I'm no longer in conflict with tech resources.
Thank you for that. We'll make note of that. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, respected members of council. With me today, I just wanted to confirm, if I may, with the team. I'm accompanied by Catherine Gizikoff, our General Manager of Land Strategy, and I don't actually see Catherine on the screen at the moment. And I just wanted to confirm that we do have access to promote her as well. There, I see her popping on. And if I may also ask, I'm joined by our program manager for aquatic monitoring, Dennis Kramer. And I was just wondering if I might ask that he be promoted as well to panelist, please.
There he is.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your patience with the technical details there. So I am going to share my screen as well, just to begin our presentation. And would welcome, this is our first opportunity on behalf of Tech to join you here as a new council. Certainly, I know it probably feels like you're not a new council now. You've had several weeks of working together over a month, I believe. But I wanted to congratulate those of you who have just joined council and congratulate those of you who are continuing your terms. And also wanted to thank you for your roles in public service for the important work that you do. This, I will say, is an opportunity and maybe an attempt for us as a company just to get before you. Would be interested in any feedback that you have after our presentation today, wanting to just open the lines of communication and ensure that you have an opportunity to hear regularly from Tech, given our operations and scope in the Elk Valley and within the region near Fernie. And so after today, if you have any comments or anything that you'd like to provide to us by way of this style of communication, would greatly appreciate any feedback that you have. May I just confirm by a thumbs up from any of you on council that you can see the screen share, you can see the presentation? Thank you. Okay. What we have had to make just a couple of substitutions with the roster today from Tech. Norm Fraser, my colleague, who is the engagement manager for the Fording River Extension project, is not able to join us. And so we do have Catherine Gizikoff here, as I mentioned, General Manager of Land Strategy, and Dennis Kramer, Program Manager for the Aquatics Monitoring Program. I sent you quite a lengthy presentation. I appreciate if any of you had a chance to review it in advance. My intention is not to go through that slide by slide. I did just want to provide you with some background information in advance of the conversation today, and really wanted to spend most of the time just talking a little bit about a year in review, some of the milestones that we've had here at Tech, and then also leave some time for questions as well. So you'll notice in the presentation, the first few slides were really intended just to draw attention to us as a company, the size and scale of our operations. And more than anything, I would just like to point out, I feel quite proud of the fact that a resource that we have in the Elk Valley is such an important resource on the international stage, and is part of a global supply chain and manufacturing need around the world. And that's why I've included some of the slides just about what metallurgical or steelmaking coal, the product that we produce in the Valley, is used for, and some of the benefits that it provides as our world continues to urbanize and grow. And then certainly just a slide there on some of the routes that our products follow once they leave the Elk Valley, head out to the West Coast and onto various destinations around the world from there. What I did just want to spend a moment on, though, is in February of this year, there was an economic contribution analysis of Tech's operations and work throughout the region that was done by Deloitte in partnership with the BC Chamber of Commerce, and thought that you may be interested in some of the conclusions and the statistics that study revealed. So I just have some stats up there from that economic contribution analysis related to employment. The study looked at not just direct employment, but also indirect employment and induced. So really ranges everything from a Tech employee like myself, the service contractors in the region, and then the dollars and the impacts that those wages have as they're spent throughout the economy. For example, consumption of housing products, restaurants, hotels, and that sort of thing. So quite a lengthy ripple effect throughout the economy as we go, and certainly have heard some really good feedback at all levels of government, both in the region and throughout the province, and even at the federal level based on this information. So I'll just pop down to a couple of highlights from the year that was. Appreciate you making time for us just before we close off for the holidays. And as many of you might be familiar, in 2013 and 2014, Tech developed the Elk Valley Water Quality Plan. Water, of course, is the most important resource in the valley. It's a great interest, and it's a subject that's very near and dear to everybody's hearts. The Elk Valley Water Quality Plan was developed as a plan to lay out Tech's plans for water treatment of mine impacted water throughout the throughout our operations in the valley. And that plan requires that every 3 years, the implementation plan, or the way in which that plan is supposed to be developed and executed on, has to be updated. So we call that the implementation plan adjustment. And in July of this year, we submitted our implementation plan adjustment for the Elk Valley Water Quality Plan. So big piece of work went into that, and great effort by a lot of people. Also, you'll see in the presentation at the end, there's some statistics there around our water treatment, both the current capacity and planned capacity and work that's to happen over the next several years, right up to 2042. Should also note that we do have plans and are close to submitting permit applications in the district of Sparwood for a new central office that will be located just across from Komatsu there along Highway 3. It's an area known as Middletown Crossing. And so a lot of work was done this year as we attempt to try and consolidate some of our operations and our employees that are spread throughout Sparwood and other locations into a single central office as well. And Catherine is here today. I won't speak too much to this, but she'll provide us an overview and some information about an exciting goal that we've subscribed to and articulated this year around the goal of being nature positive, topic that's on everybody's minds right now as COP15 in Montreal is just wrapping up. And finally, we continued with our community investment program throughout the valley, many of the dollars of which supported organizations of many stripes throughout the city of Fernie specifically, and more broadly around the valley. As I mentioned, our engagement manager for the Fording River Extension Project, Norm Fraser, couldn't be here today and sends his regrets. And so what I just wanted to mention to you about the Fording River Extension Project is it is a major regulatory application that TEC continues to attempt to advance at the moment. This project would allow our Fording River operations to continue well beyond sort of initial projected decline rates are expected to be seen towards the latter part of this decade. And this project would allow us to make use of the existing infrastructure that's already in place for our operations and just extend out the mineable reserves and maintain the 1,400 jobs that are currently involved in and employed with Fording River operations up north of Alford. And so we do have many residents in Fernie that work up there and contractors as well. And hope that we can continue to see some progress in 2023 with this application. It is going through a joint review of both the BC Provincial Environmental Assessment Office and the Federal Assessment Agency. And so you can see here in this slide that we are certainly very early on attempting to try and get approval, a readiness decision, which from the regulators, which would allow us to actually complete and submit the application for review so that we can continue that work. And had a slide in there as well, just to highlight some of the particular sustainability objectives and approaches that are planned to be integrated into the Fording River Extension Project as well. And so with that, I'm just going to ask Catherine to come back on camera and present to you. I'll run the slides for her, but she will present on Nature Positive. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Rory, and thank you, Your Worship, and honorable members of council for allowing us the time today. Speaking to you from Kamloops here, so hopefully there's no technical difficulties, but just wanted to capture a few minutes of your time to talk a little bit about Nature Positive. And many of you, as Rory had mentioned, were aware, it was in the news last week with the COP Biodiversity Conference in Montreal. So many of you are sort of aware of the context around it. But earlier this year, TEC made a commitment, Don Lindsay spoke up and made a commitment for TEC to be striving for being a nature positive company, along with several other leaders in the mining industry globally. And what that is in response to the growing awareness of the loss of global diversity. And some of the statistics that's starting to come out from some of the researchers are things like 68% of the global biodiversity was actually lost between 1970 and 2016, and a great percentage of species becoming extinct over the next several decades if we don't step up and take action. to the point as well as that it is linked to climate change and the climate change crisis and becoming as significant of a consideration as that. And that will also have significant impacts on our world's economy as well. So that is the topic that he was speaking to. And the reason that I'm coming to making sure that the city of Fernie is aware of the commitment is that we'll see over the next couple of slides here is this is just an introduction. And I just wanted to make sure that the city was aware that this is also an opportunity to get involved and bring things to our attention. But in any case, before I go into that, how we're going to achieve Nature Positive as tech, the company, is that we're going to integrate nature-informed decision-making into our business decisions. So using the mitigation hierarchy, which is illustrated here. On the left, we have avoid and minimize, making our footprints as small as possible, minimizing effects from areas adjacent to our activities, to rehabilitate and reclaim as quickly as possible and use innovation and research and new techniques to make sure it's reclamation excellence. And in terms of offsite work, to do conservation and offsite land restoration work as well, because it takes time for our reclaimed lands to grow. So there is a temporal loss. So we want to look at offsite conservation as well. Those three pieces together will make us a nature positive company, and that will make, and minimize our impacts or effects on biodiversity as we go forward from 2022. There is another piece here too, I think on the next slide, Rory, that we speak to how do communities get involved. There are pieces there that are not just looking at conservation and restoration projects in the region, which the city or our members can bring to our attention to partner on, but there's also opportunity to get involved in education and experimental learning as well within the communities. The community can approach tech for opportunities to partner on some engagement programs, educational programs, interpretive centers, boardwalks, anything that they think that might expose youth in particular to nature and make sure that they're aware of nature-based decisions, as well as looking at opportunities for recreation and access management to expose people in the communities to some of the activities that might be going on in the region. And we might be able to partner on building trails and boardwalks, work together on community gardens and such. In any case, I think that the next slide is the last one. The main message and the reason that we're here today is just to introduce the nature positive topic to you and make sure that you're aware this is an opportunity for discussion over the next several months or the next couple of years. But to look at, what can we do together, bring something to us, see how we can partner on projects that might link habitat or restore areas within the region or areas within the Fernie boundaries or adjacent to that, work on projects that are of interest to members of the community. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware about that. There's no formal process for us to set up something to engage or consult on this. It's really just quite informal, and we're more than willing to sit down and have a more thorough discussion about things that we are already exploring doing in the region and see what might be of interest on the city's mind as well. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you all. Is that it for the presentation?
Your worship, yeah, I just wanted to do a time check with you. I had included some slides as well on water quality, and I know that we're likely butting up against time, so I'm happy to leave those there for reference and come back for a more detailed presentation on that topic if that's of interest.
Yeah, actually, I think we would prefer a detailed presentation on water quality. That would be excellent, Mr. O'Connor. Thank you. And we are at time, so actually, I made a bit of an executive decision, seeing that Ms. Gitzik is moving through her slides quickly, that let you run a little bit over. But thank you for the presentation. Does council have any questions for our delegation? Councilman Kaiser.
Thank you, Worship. I had one question. In the slide pack that was in the package, under the coordinated assessment, which gives a conceptual timeline of the construction operation, that the last section that's marked as closure, doesn't have any time or information associated with it. What, I assume that this is happening on an ongoing basis, that there are areas of the mine that get closed. When that happens, like, what is the expected timeline for that? Is it something that happens in the case of like months, or is it years, or is it decades? How long, what is the ending life cycle for a coal mine? I'm afraid I don't know that.
Through the chair to Councilor McIsaac. I would like to turn part of your question over to Catherine, if I may. But I did just want to mention that I would say historically, miners have not been incredibly good about thinking about closure until they were closed. And there has now been a greater emphasis on building closure plans right up front at project conceptualization. And so we have now developed internally at Tech a closure standard, of which we're working. So for example, that slide that you're referring to was part of the Fording River Extension slides. We've brought on a closure expert as part of the team. So as the application is developed, there'll be greater specifics laid out in relation to timelines on closure and process for closure as we go. But if that's okay, I'll just turn that part of your question over to Catherine, as well as she runs our reclamation programs as well.
Thank you, Rory, and thank you, Councillor. That's a little bit of a broad question, so I'll answer it a little bit detailed and a little bit broad as well. But just to build a little bit on what Rory has said, Tech has recently implemented a new internal closure standard, which we are implementing and developing closure plans for all our operating sites in the Elk Valley and they're all required internally to be done by 2023. And that is because of the heightened focus, as Rory mentioned, on a commitment to closure planning, something that was never really required in the province before, other than sort of conceptual through our regulatory applications. So a greater focus on that, and that is consistent with international standards now that we are ICMM member, and so that we are doing those in accordance with those standards. We are also, through Nature Positive, accelerating reclamation. We've always talked about progressive reclamation, but there's a new heightened focus on accelerating reclamation and increasing our rate of reclaim to disturb ratio. For FRX, will be a newer extension application. So the closure planning will be built into the application. So say if it's a 25-year mine life, there will be a closure plan submitted with the regulatory application, which is something some of the older mines never had to do. So certainly, I guess that's kind of a vague answer, but a very heightened focus on closure planning and making it more timely now, Councillor.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer. Here at the city, we've taken increasing attention to within our asset management program, but the total life cycle of things and the impact and the cost therein. And so that's the first time that I've been sitting here that I've seen that actual part of a plan appear coming from Tech. So I appreciated that. So thank you for the explanation.
Thank you, Councilor McIsaac. I did have one question as well, and it may relate. I think it relates to Ms. It's weird, Catherine, to call you Ms. Gibscott. On your slide about your Nature Positive slide, you talked about partnership opportunities for conservation and restoration. So, for example, and I'm not thinking of a specific example, if in the confines of the city of Fernie we saw an opportunity for habitat enhancement in, say, a wetland or wetland restoration opportunity, is that the sort of thing that is envisioned in these partnerships?
Let me expand on that a little bit, if I could, Your Worship. If there was a wetland opportunity and the city saw it as an educational opportunity for the city and its members, and Tech saw it as an environmental opportunity, because we're very interested right now in wetland restoration projects. We're recently partnering with Ducks Unlimited and another one in the region. There might be a partnership there where there might be some contribution or some activity done by the city, promoting it or getting it into the schools. And there might be, more of the actual biophysical works or construction works might be taken on by Tech, for example. So that's the type of partnership that could be an example.
Well, thank you. Any other questions for the delegation? Councilor Nixon.
Just one, in seeing that, maybe just an unfair question. Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Maybe it's an unfair question because Mr. Fraser's not here, but just on the Fording River expansion, Thinking about how important this is to the city of Fernie coffers and to the general BC economy and the Canadian economy. Is there a plan B if Fording River doesn't get approved?
Through the chair to Councillor Nixon. Thank you for the question, and your question has come to us in several forms in other forums lately. So it is something that's on people's minds very clearly. And so I appreciate you thinking about it. At this point in time, the Fording River extension is the largest, and it's the largest regulatory application and the single focus that we have to extend operations at Fording River without interruption. There are operational tweaks and changes that we can make, and there are other potential opportunities at each of the sites, but none of them offer the same level of beneficial use of existing infrastructure, which would minimize impacts with being able to continue at the current levels of production for Fording River. So the short answer is there is not a perfect substitute for this project, but there are other operational tweaks, and we would have to explore more intensively what other options we would have as a backup to this. But we are optimistic. We've actually just recently seen some progress in some communications just in the last week from the Environmental Assessment Office in relation to some of the discussions happening with the broader communities, Indigenous communities, and other communities of interest interested in the project. And we also believe there will be an opportunity to provide greater public comment on this, and we're certainly hopeful that there will be interested parties in the region, including, within the municipal boundaries, let's say, of the city of Fernie, with the population interested in seeing this project go forward, and perhaps providing some supportive comments during those periods of time. So I hope that helps answer your question, and happy to connect you as well with Norm Fraser for further discussion on that at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Any other questions?
Yes, if I may, through your worship to the tech delegation. On slide 14, you mentioned that the protection restoration will exceed the disturbance caused by your mining activities. Are you conserving other lands? And if so, where is that going on? Or am I misunderstanding things?
Thank you, Councillor. I don't have a graph to show you, but there is a graph that illustrates the loss of biodiversity from 2020 on, and we're striving to turn that around. So by 2030, we will achieve a balance there and improve biodiversity values by 2050. So that statement that you're reading on that slide is from the 2020 baseline on. We are going to be doing restoration work on site and restoration work or conservation work off-site as well to turn that curve. So at a ratio, say roughly about 3-to-1. So for every hectare that we disturb from 2020 on, we'll reclaim, conserve, or restore something off-site at about a 3-to-1 ratio. So in terms of what we can conserve, we will be looking at partnership opportunities with like Nature's Trust, Nature Conservancy, throughout the region, and any other partners or private purchases that we potentially can make. And there could be different avenues that we take with that land going forward if there's some conservation, permanent conservation that we would like to do and negotiate with the province.
Thank you. The gesticulation more than made up for the lack of graphs.
Thank you, Councillor Shoesmith. Any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. O'Connor, Ms. Gitzakoff, and Mr. Kramer, thanks for your time. Thanks for your presentation. Mr. O'Connor, if you could circle back at some point for a detailed water quality presentation, that would be awesome. It would be great to bring the council up to speed as to where you're at. And yeah, wish you all a wonderful holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Same to all of you as well. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that brings us to item 7.1, and I will ask Chief Morgan to introduce our next presenter.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to take a minute to introduce our new Deputy Fire Chief, Scott Robinson, who started last month. Scott moved to Fernie in 2007 from Lancashire, England. He has been involved with emergency management in the Elk Valley for the last 10 years. He's been the Deputy Emergency Program Coordinator for the Elk Valley and South Country, also as Director of Emergency Support Services for the Elk Valley. Scott has also been heavily involved with Fernie Search and Rescue since 2008 and is a SAR team leader there. Scott joined Fernie Fire Rescue in 2018 as an auxiliary firefighter and has been instrumental in our operations with fires, medical, and rescue calls, basically for the last 4.5 years. We're very excited to have Scott joining our team, especially in a leadership role. And I really look forward to working with him in his new role. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Morgan, and welcome, Chief Robinson. And you're providing us some information on wildfire fuel management.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I should just try and share my screen. Bear with me, please. It's my first time. Your Worship, members of council, thank you for this opportunity to present this project we've been working on around wildfire fuel management. This has been in the works for about 18 months, and we've encountered a number of challenges, mainly financial. So we'd just like to bring this to your attention and seek advice and explain what's happening with the next steps with this. There we go. So a quick overview on what fuel management is. City of Fernie has a Fire Smart program with averaging 8 recognised Fire Smart neighbourhoods annually. And Fire Smart typically works within the 30-metre known as Zone 2 of residential properties. And it's typically the neighbourhood volunteers that deal with this. Fuel management that we're looking at takes Fire Smart a step further, takes it beyond that 30-metre zone and managed by professional companies. Fuel management will still follow the Fire Smart principles. It's not harvesting for profit. And the aim of fuel management is to reduce the ground and ladder fuels, which will then reduce the possibility of high intensity fires or a fire to impact the area. Keeping the fire at the ground level assists in that fire crews, both structural and wildland, are able to action it more effectively. So I have a series of images now that will just give some examples of sort of before and after. These aren't taken from the area that we're talking about. These will be taken from the Fire Smart slide. But to give you an example, the images on the left typically show what is currently there, and the ones on the right are what the aim of fuel management will be. And so as we can see here on the left, we have a lot of continuous forest vegetation that's high hazard, whereas on the right, once we trim that, separate it, then the hazard reduces. Same for flammable shrub spacing, where there's an abundance of shrubs, as you can see on the left, there's a high hazard, whereas if it's trimmed down and scattered, as we see on the right, that's a lower hazard. Surface vegetation is another thing that is tackled. We're trying to clear up the floor, and as you can see again on the left, high risk hazard, and on the left, right, low hazard. And then finally, fuel management aims to trim trees. Where the tree goes down to the ground, creates what is known as ladder fuels. And if there's a fire at the ground level, if you climb the trees, get into the canopy where it comes out of control, and that's where you see the air tanks need to come in and drop the rest of on the trees where the fire retardant. Whereas on the right, we can see that those trims have been limbed. It reduces the possibility of the fire that were to be on the ground from climbing those trees and getting into the canopy. The background to this project is in 2018, the City of Fernie contracted BA Blackwell Associates to complete a community wildfire protection plan. And in that community wildfire protection plan, it identified 5 areas of high priority fuel management listed there. And with that in hand, an approach was made to Columbia Basin Trust under one of their grant programs. For that amount there, 127,000 to show up. That was applied for in April 2021, and we got approval from CBT in 2021, June 2021. That's a rough breakdown of the grant application. And where we're finding our challenges is in the $90,000 contract. We're finding a way in excess of that. The grant was to address the fuel management issues at the cemetery, around Ridgemont, and also at the Cedars. And for this grant, initially we had to report by the end of October 22. Obviously, the deadline has now passed. So as part of that application, once we had approval, we had the prescription updated in September 2021 by the BA Blackwell. And the prescription outlines exactly the works that will be carried out. We fulfilled the request or the requirement to fill an admin role. That was completed in September 2021, and a part-time member was employed to take on that role. We also contracted a project manager to oversee any works that were to be carried out. The skill level is beyond that of the fire department because it's specific to forestry management. So we wanted to make sure that any contractor we brought in was abiding by the prescription and the requirements. And so a project manager was brought in for that, and that they're based in Cranbrook as Tanglefoot Forestry Consultants. We then released the initial RFP in October 2021 for the treatment in the Ridgemont and Cedars, and we held field tours of those areas late October with any interested contractor and the project manager, so they could see the work that was required, and so they could have an informed response to the RFP. Only one contractor responded. The amount there, 226,500 was their quote. We have allocated 90,000, or asked for 90,000 in the grant for that, so way in excess of what we anticipated coming in at. As a result of that, we went back to the CBT and asked if we could change the scope of the grant and remove one of the areas, that being the Cedars, and they agreed to that. And so we re-released the RFP in April of this year. Again, we held field tours so that contractors could see what we're asking, what the prescription entailed, and so they were able to come back with a qualified quote. And again, it was just the same single contract that came back. They had reduced their cost slightly because we removed one area, but it was still way in excess of what we had budgeted. You can see twice as much. And so as a last ditch effort, we held a meeting with that contractor to look at options to reduce costs further. And in those discussions, as a result of that, they came back with an overall final common beaten quote of 145,266. And add that to the administration fees and costs that the grant supported. The grant would now come in at 182,210, and we'd already asked for 126,000. So as a result of that, we again went back to CBT in the summer of this year, and they agreed that the grant that we applied for did have a maximum limit of 150,000, even though we'd only asked for 126. That grant would cap out at 150,000. And they agreed that they were willing to increase the grant to the maximum, as long as the city of Fernie were willing to then make any difference between that maximum and what the final cost came in at. And so they were to 150. What we've got at the moment is roughly takes it to 182, 183. So about 35,000, give or take, for the city of Fernie, because obviously we're basing on estimates, of course, at the moment. And as a result of that, the CBT have also extended their grant deadline to May 15, 2023 to allow us to approach council and see if they were willing to approve that spend. So I'd like to touch on why we chose Ridgemont as our fuel management area. But originally we had the Cedars and Ridgemont because they were the high priority areas identified by BA Blackwell in the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. We removed the seeders and focused on Ridgemont because we haven't done some fire smart work in Ridgemont and Cemetery. We already have a demonstration project there. We have signage up. I don't know if you've seen it, but if you walk around on the right-hand side, as you walk around the cemetery, there's 3 signs up there that display the fire smart work being carried out. And that was carried out around 2018. And so as part of the CWPP, they highlighted Ridgemont both the high priority and the fact that it allows us to extend that demonstration work. Because Ridgemont is a high usage area from the community, it allows us to promote fire smart principles as they're using the area. And so it was the ideal candidate for the area for us to be carried out at. This is the area map that is impacted. So where you see the CEM, the cemetery, that greenish polygon is the area of works. And then also RMX, Ridgemont Extended, is the other area. So there's 2 areas identified where the work is needed. In the cemetery area and both RMX, the issue we're facing is highly inaccessible by mechanical means. It's all hand, pretty much, which is why the costs we're finding elsewhere. Challenges that we're facing is in Fernie, we can't actually complete fuel management works between April 14 and August. It's basically the end of August. 2 reasons for that. One is we're not allowed to disturb trees while birds are migrating because the nesting of those trees. We can't be taking trees down and affecting migrating birds. And also, as you're aware, I'm sure there's a very high wildfire risk during that time of year, often in burning situations. The reason for the high cost, which I've already mentioned, primarily is because those areas require manual treatment. That's basically hand labor rather than sending a machinery. The pruning heights are relatively high, so there's a lot of effort in pruning all those polished. Timber is not merchantable, with the quality of timber there we can't really sell. And because there's a lot of trails in that area and there's a high usage, that needs to be managed. So we need to potentially close down trails, have spotters, things like that, so that if there are crews working in those areas, that they're not being used by the community for their own safety. And part of the prescription is that there are low soil disturbance targets, which basically mean they have to work on frozen ground or very hard ground. It can't be soft ground. And ideally, you would grade 30 centimeters snow coverage if operating through the winter. And in order to complete these works, the contractors are saying they cannot start any later than February 2023 in order to meet the deadlines of not being able to work beyond April 14. And obviously our extension with CBT is we have to report in May. So our next steps with this project is, first of all, to just explain the project to yourselves and any questions you may have. And then hopefully we'll bring a request for decision to your next regular council meeting, requesting whether you would approve funding to the 35,000 ask. Assuming council were to approve that, we would then need to go back to CBT just to make sure that they're going to increase the 150,000. We do have that verbally and as an email, but due diligence is we're going to make sure that they're going to honour that, and I'm sure they will. As this project has taken so long to get to this stage, we still need to confirm availability and secure the services of the contract that responded and the project manager. We have been in continued conversations with them, and they are saying they can still meet those deadlines. But again, once we have the funding in place, then we just need to finalize and secure that. We would also need to organise a neighbourhood meeting, primarily for Ridgemont residents, but it's anybody who's interested, just to explain the project, the scope of the project, and outline why they may see machinery and people in that area. Equally, we would like to, through the communications department, extend that information throughout the city of Fernie, again, because it's not just Ridgemont residents that use that area. We need the whole community to be aware of the works that are going on in that area and the reasons for those works. Liaise with the trail network groups for some reasons. With the goal of the contractor starting mid-February, and they anticipate being on site for 4 to 6 weeks. So yes, thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. That's where we're at with this project. We figured it would be best use of time to bring that today, so that you have time to ask questions, and if I need to go back and get further information for council meetings, and also for you to consider that in prior to council.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Any questions from council? Councilor,
My first question is, how come, do you know where the discrepancy came from the budgeted amount versus the actual? Can you explain that aspect a little bit better?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Hamilton. I anticipated this question. And when we originally put the grant application together, we did use the professional to advise, and they came up with that figure. It was a VA Blackwell professional. What we are finding is that here in the southeast, the quotes for fuel management, they typically quote per hectare, and they're coming in at 2 to 3 times higher than what is happening down in the lower mainland. Primarily, reasons are contractors, actually not in this case, a contractor is a local contractor, but typically the contractor comes from out of town. And they didn't really appreciate the difference between mechanical work and the amount of manual work that it's going to take. When they originally came up with the amount, they thought they could do a lot more mechanical work. Once the contractors have been in and had a detailed look, they determined that they can't really use those mechanical means, and that as it's manual treatment, the original extended area is pretty much 100% manual labour. That just a lot more time involved, and the costs are increased exponentially because of that.
any other questions? And so you're staying with the original respondent to the RFP,
Yes.
as you stayed in touch with them, the reasoning being, since they're the only, and this is, I'm not challenging the idea, but the reason being they're the only ones who've ever responded, therefore they're the only ones that will likely respond in the future.
Yes, Your Worship, that's correct. For both of the field tours that we held, well, 5 different contractors came out. It was the same contractors came to both field tours, and it was only the same single contractor that actually sent in a response to the RFP. We have kept in touch with them because we don't want them to fill their calendar, trying to keep this date free. Because if they fill the calendar to another job, then they'll lose them and the project will not go ahead anyway. So yes, we've kept in constant contact with them. Also to make sure that the prices haven't risen.
Sure.
Because their third quote came in July, and with no prices continue to rise, they are still saying that they will make their best efforts. It is a quote, but they will make their best efforts to stick to their third quote.
And the other 4 contractors who did the site tour, did they indicate why they didn't, or they just didn't?
Not all of them replied, but the ones that we were able to get communications with basically say yes. The reason we're not responding is because it's all manual work. We can't sell machinery and it's just too intensive. And those other contractors are based outside of Fernie, so they would have to bring in crews, put them up in hotels or whatever, things like that. And the cost just became way too much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Schuster?
Yeah, through your worship to Deputy Chief. In the event of a cost overrun or work stoppage or any other problem, if there's any overruns, where does that land? What's our plan with that?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Shoesmith, the CBT have made it clear that they will not go beyond 150,000. So yes, if there is a cost overrun, it would fall on the City of Fernie meet that. All I can say to that is we will have to be, keep an eye on our contractor, through the project manager. As part of their RFP, they have detailed that they will be in regular correspondence with us where they lie with the budget and if they are encountering cost overruns. They don't anticipate any, but I can't say that they won't encounter. That's why we are saying it's an estimated 35,000. That's the best number we can come up with today. And
Councillor Ramadas and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question there, Chief Robinson. What's the, like, if this goes through, what is our next steps? Like, what's the next plan? I see that there are 5 different regions here. Are we going after Lower Alpine, James White also in the future? Is it being planned?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Ramadas. We have applied numerous years for fuel management grants through the UBCM, the Community Resilience Initiative grants, primarily, and we've always been refused. The reason we've been refused is because we have been boarding higher rates per hectare than they expect to see, because they're based in the Lower Mainland, and a lot of their quotes that they are and fees they expect to see are way less. So CBT were the first one to approve a fuel management grant for us. We feel that once we have completed the fuel management project and we have real figures and we have invoices from a contractor, we will then be able to go back to CRI with more justification as to why our costs are so much higher and hope that they will then approve grant funding through CRI. And so in answer to your question, yes, we are hoping to address those other areas, assuming we can secure grant funding, and by at least one project going through, we would have that, we will be able to justify why we are quoting so high compared to everywhere else.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is probably more directed at Director Purdett, but where is the intended funding from the cities coming up? What budget is that being allocated from?
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. It'll be, a funding recommendation will be firmed up as part of the report in January, but my initial idea is to either pull from our general capital reserve, which is ending balance of 350,000. Sorry, let me just pull it up for sure. Yeah, 353,000, or the financial stability operating reserve that we created for things just like this, which end of 2022 has an ending balance of 534,000. But as we get deeper into our budget prep for our initial meetings early February, I'll be able to lock that down a bit more for early January.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Just a question for Deputy Chief Robinson. So the Fire Smart program is within 30 meters of a house, and then the fuel management, we have to use contractors, from my understanding. Is there any opportunity for us to engage volunteers? Because I mean, there's a few volunteers in this community that are fairly invested. I'm just curious about that.
Through your worship to Councillor Nixon. Yes, we can use volunteers. I mean, not necessarily for this project, because it does involve felling of trees. That does require professional services. Obviously, we're not clear cutting up. Hopefully, I appreciate that. But there will be some felling involved, which means volunteers can't be involved with that. The 30-meter zone, the reason that's brought up is most property lines end around that. Fire Smart itself does have a zone 3, the 30 meter to 100 meter zone, which those residents who have larger properties and have that will extend beyond the 30 meter zone, and it's after the zone 3 as it's known as themselves. But once you start getting beyond that, you get onto Crown land, which this is Crown land, then yes, we typically need professional services. That being said, the demonstration forest that was completed in the cemetery has that was all hand pruning, manual to that level, no mechanical machine involved, no chainsaws. That was actually completed by volunteers.
Yeah.
That was the nature of your question. You wanted to
No,
come
no,
back
it
to you?
wasn't. No, no, it wasn't. I totally, no, I'm just, no, it wasn't.
Deputy Chief, so you talked about building a case for the next funding applications, or funding applications with CRI? Sorry, was that the acronym you used?
Your worship, yes, that's correct.
Now, are you, so given that our region, it's harder for our region to come in at an expected price point compared to the lower mainland, do we have relationships with other communities that are going through the same struggle and making the same pitch? So building a broader case regionally.
Yes, your worship, I think that is the case. Fuel management projects are taking place throughout the Elk Valley, primarily Cranbrook area, Cranbrook, Kimberley, you've also had one. They just occurred this year as well, and so we'll see what their costs are. Cranbrook, over the last couple of years, have been doing prescribed burning. That's something we haven't done here, primarily because we don't want to risk it. We had, I like to first of all remove those ground fuels through fuel management, and then limb the trees so that if we were to go down the prescribed burning route, but I'm sure you've seen that where the base of the trees are charred, that's to be the prescribed burning route. That may be something we could then look at in the future, but today it's not something we've looked at just because of the nature of the forest surrounding it.
Understood. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Deputy Chief Robinson. I appreciate the presentation and we look forward to the follow-up.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our agenda, but before we adjourn, I'd like to remind council we have the presentation of the George S. Magic Spiritus Award at 6 o'clock at the Senior Center, proceeding to the well-deserving Dr. Ron Clark. So please join us for that event. Thank you. And with that, we shall call the meeting adjourned.